Okay, welcome to this episode of hashtag PM in Real Life. I'm your host, Chuck Scott. Today I have the wonderfully talented April Wu as my guest. So welcome, April.
Hi.
We are here to talk about April's business. Tell them your business name.
It's Insphere Consulting. Insphere as INSPHERE.
Awesome. And we're going to talk a little bit about how she got to running her own consulting firm. She plays in the ERP space, which we will discuss further. So without further ado, April, let's get into it. Let's start with your background. Where are you from?
I am originally from China. I was born in China. I moved here to U.S. Actually, I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin. So in the year 2011 is when I moved here. So it's been a while.
Okay. And how did you get from Madison to Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah, so ever since I moved here, it's always Midwest. So I went to school in Wisconsin. I found a job in Chicago after I graduated. And then I found another better job back then, back in Ohio. So that's what got me here.
Awesome. So what'd you major in?
Actually, undergrad is economics, and master is in accounting.
Okay. And talk a little bit about, you get out of college, what's the journey look like, what kind of jobs are you doing?
Yeah, so my first job in Chicago that I got is a tax consultant in Deloitte. So we're doing a research and development tax credit. It's not your like average tax consultant kind of thing. Like normally people would picture a tax accountant just filing tax forms like every day. That's not what we do. Actually, gather a lot of data. There's a lot of like interview that we do with customers to make sure what they do is qualify for that credit. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of like interviews and taking notes. It was pretty challenging actually back then for me, as English is not my first language. And it was a lot of like very industry specific terminologies back then. We dealt with government developers and like people that's designing the equipment and machine. Mm-hmm. So that was a lot of it's a true consulting job back then.
So I find that a lot of people who have never been in the consultant space, it's like this black hole, right? Like there's all types of different consultants out there, right? So I kind of want to paint the picture a little bit about one, just that transition from you get out of school, you're recruited by a big four consulting firm, right? Like, which is kind of a big deal. And ideal for a lot of college grads, right? Because it's some very rapid experience. Would you call it high pressure?
For sure. I would say it's kind of like a big four thing. Like before I even get a job, it's kind of like a reputation there. Like I was expecting like overtime, like overtime is kind of a normal life. So I kind of already know what I'm getting into. But when I'm actually there, start the experience, like a weekend would just go away from me by working, or like a night when I get off work, like say 7, and a couple of hours of just eating and like browsing phones, and it's already like 9-10, and I still need to wrap some work up.
Right.
It was that kind of a day of life back then.
Yeah. So to paint the picture for the audience here, so big four consulting firms, so Capgemini, Deloitte, who am I missing? PwC. Who's Ernst Young. Ernst Young, or EY as it's often referred to. They recruit a lot of talents fresh out of college, a lot of MBA grads, etc. And, they're very good paid jobs, fresh out of college. And the idea is that they have these relationships with these large corporations. Large corporations pay them huge amounts of money to come in and do some level of consulting, whether it be, changes to their organization, changes to their operations, finding ways of cost savings, in this case, taxes, right? And the idea is that the consulting firm is bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to be able to help usher in that change. And they hire talent like April, to be part of their army, right? Like I always call it an army. They bring an army of people. And from a business standpoint, the consulting firm is billing hours for every single person on their army, right? So April's one of those people that are, logging probably 12-hour days.
Right.
And the consulting firm is making buku money on this. And I think for the corporations, the big gain there is that everyone trusts these new commodities and these big four consulting firms. They trust that they're going to get the job done with this army of talent, and they throw at every single piece of work. And the consulting firm has lots and lots of layers of very senior level partners and sales teams, et cetera. And so they're constantly looking for additional work and additional ways to add value at these clients to continue working, to continue billable hours, right?
Right.
In a nutshell, that's the big four consulting game. So,
and really thinking about it, like, I got to pay the fixed salary. Everybody does, but, they make us work overtime. So, but they got to bill hourly. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
big profit.
I would guesstimate that for every resource in the big four consulting firm, they're probably profiting at least $200K off of each individual. Would you guess that?
Yeah, probably even more than that. Let's say like an average hourly they bill, like the rate would be, let's say $200 an hour. And, somebody fresh out of college, they probably get paid like a 60 to 80K.
Yeah.
So
I way lowballed that. I mean, we're probably talking 300-400K profit.
Right.
Realistically.
Right.
So anyway, that is the big four consulting game. So you are in one of these roles. When did you learn English? You mentioned English being the second language.
Well, there were like English as a required class to take. They even exam you on that back in China. And before I moved to where I could get into Madison, Wisconsin, I actually went to a Chinese university, which they actually teach in English.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I got a little prepared before I come here.
Okay. So gone through college, you got your Deloitte job, you're consulting. It's challenging, but like you're making it through it. Like you said, long days, but probably gaining a wealth of experience during this time, right?
For sure. I definitely feel like I've learned a lot. The industries that, my clients are very broad. There's, like I said, like a clothing developers, and they're like equipment developers, and, just like a science people out there that we need to learn what they do day by day, so we know if they qualify for the tax credit. So yeah, that industry knowledge is definitely gained tremendously. Plus, I feel like accounting is just a good subject, like a good major to have. Like accounting is really teaching you kind of day-to-day business transactions. It gives us like a good business foundation.
Agreed. I was blessed to have a finance role for about 2 years when I worked for L Brands, which is the parent company to Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, a couple other Nova brands. And, it has blessed me in my career because everything has a financial element. Like, I don't care what you're doing in a business, it all has a financial element. And you really need to conceptualize, like, how important it is that things take a tie from a financial element to everything that you're doing, whether you're moving inventory, whether you're tracking, like, freight charges, or whether you're even cost savings mechanisms, right? Like, you're just, like, savings as far as the way that you do your banking. And when you're talking the scale of large corporations, this translates to like millions of dollars. I think that's a piece that people don't understand is everything is just, when you're talking a large enterprise, anything that's like $1, but times it by a million equals $1 million, right? Like everything's just that much bigger. So I agree with you that understanding of financial knowledge is key. And for me, like learning about SAP, which is a system, a technical system. I'm trying to put it in layman's terms for non-IT listeners. It's a technical system, and an ERP is essentially, I always liken it to like in anatomical terms, like the vertebrae of technology systems. Everything plugs into it, right? And so you play in this space, so I'll let you speak to it a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, so I mean, SAP would be a good example. It's one of the top-notch ERP, one of the popular ones. Like any like bigger company names you can even think of, like Apple, Google, Meta, anything you can think of. They're probably using one of the ERPs, either SAP or Oracle ERP. So those are the largest one targeting like larger companies. And ERP in general is just like a centralized database. A lot of people have heard of like a QuickBooks, but ERP, whatever QuickBooks does, which is just bookkeeping or accounting side of it, all in place a little part in ERP. And ERP can be applicable for like their sales team, for CRM could be a module of ERP. Something accounting related could be a module in the ERP. Something inventory management, like doing your pick, pack, ship, or receiving like inventory management, like scanning through, that could be one part of a whole ERP. So really like your entire company, if you're like a project-based service company, your project management or timesheet or, billing based on the timesheet can also be part of an ERP. So ERP is really just like a centralized database where you can have all the apps in there.
That's a great way of saying it. You mentioned a couple things in there. You mentioned CRM, which for those that don't know, it's customer relationship management. It's a way that every company out there blasts your inbox right now with emails and ways of engaging you as a potential customer. But you also mentioned modules. And I think that's a big thing for us to key here on. So I mentioned that, an ERP is essentially kind of you call it a database of information, a way of processing. Probably a better way of saying it than my anatomical vertebrae, but modules are all parts and pieces that, what would you say, pull information out of this database and use them for different functions? Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So go ahead and explain a little bit, like you kind of touched on this, but explain a little bit more about modules and how ERPs are implemented and leveraged, right? Because I don't know that you always implement all modules, right?
Yeah, so the modules, exactly like what you mentioned, I would say it's kind of like think of ERP as your phone.
Okay.
Each module will be each app on your phone.
That's a great way.
So each module or each app have their own functionality. So normally an ERP has a lot of modules that are already like ready to go, available. However, that doesn't mean somebody else couldn't do better. Mm-hmm. So, just kind of like your app store, like for one thing, there might be so many vendors doing that same app. But, they look different, they function differently. Same thing with an ERP. Like ERP would have its own like app to cover that functionality already, but that doesn't mean somebody else could do a better thing and more specialized. So let's say at the ERP, you would have say that CRM, the customer relationship part. So like the ERP that I work on, NetSuite, which is an Oracle product. So NetSuite has its own built-in CRM functionalities. However, there's always like Salesforce or HubSpot out there that specialize just in CRM. People might like their feature better. There might be more advanced, so people might have both their ERP but don't use the ERP CRM, and they purchase an external CRM just like connect to your ERP.
Yeah.
So
I'm very curious, how do companies go about selecting a ERP? And I'm going to preface it by saying SAP is one of the most popular ERPs out there.
Yeah. I
find it to be one of the most clunky user tools ever invented. It's a German-based company, right? Mm-hmm. I think most of it, so to describe to people that have never seen SAP, it's got a lot of blue screens, which I think you can customize in different colors, but I remember seeing it in blue screens.
Yeah.
It's a lot of words that don't even make sense. You just learn them over time for your business function or whatever you're doing with it. Literally, it's still basically like a German thing. You type in what's called T codes for just about every function, at least in the financial function I did when I was in the financial role. And these T codes are things like 1, 2, 3 FBLN. And you memorize them, right? Like,
yeah.
And you're like, well, I know that 1, 2, 3 FBLN pulls this report for me. I get to do this function, right? So how, why is it the SAP? I'm very curious. Like, how did SAP become the god of ERBs?
Well, I'm not super sure. Yeah. I mean, it's really kind of like when I got into the industry, it's already kind of there. It's kind of like, why Microsoft is so popular in, your operating systems. It's kind of like, they got into the market far enough or early enough to get that reputation out there. And it's same thing with like Big Four. Like not necessarily they're doing the best thing in the industry. There are some smaller vendors doing greater job for sometimes, but people still go to Big Four just for the brand. So it's kind of like that kind of a setting. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on two things I definitely want to pause on. So you mentioned Big Fours. And you kind of touched on speed to market with SAP, right? Like being the first of its kind in the market. My understanding is that with SAP, because it was so robust, meaning like it was so customizable, right? I think that's where it got its foothold. That's my understanding, at least. But again, I've never really deep dived into this. And there's something to be said about being there first, right? Like being the first of your kind and selling early and often and getting the masses to adopt it means that, right? Like it's just in place and it's like it just gains more and more momentum.
Yeah. And if you start it, you kind of like bring the whole industry standards. Like, a lot of companies use this and then their auditors needs to be familiar with that. And then, it's the whole auditing industry is also part of it. And the whole kind of talent market is there, is ready to go. So, it really just attract more companies to adopt the same thing just because it's a whole industry there already.
So I have a piggyback question to that. So recently, Salesforce has grabbed a lot of market share in this space. In your opinion, like, why is that? What was Salesforce able to do to pigeonhole itself in there and start expanding out into the market and become widely adopted at this point?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that Salesforce is also doing a really great job just specializing in the CRM part.
Okay.
So they would be, I would say there's not so many companies that are kind of got in there and really study the industry and get a software, which is also cloud-based software that can be customized into, the whole sales market or like the sales industry. So I would say they're also kind of a frontier that, be cloud-based, very accustomed into the industry and flexible for everybody that can use it, and just really like got into that market.
Nice.
Similar to SAP, but like any ERP, CRM is not necessarily as robust. So they're like, let's do our own app that does the CRM, because we can connect to a lot of other apps or like into your website, collecting everything. So yeah, I think they got their own platform, just very comprehensively working for the industry.
Gotcha. Okay, so the second thing that you mentioned was Big Four, I would say accounting firms, but they also do consulting. Big Four consulting firms compared to smaller companies that offer similar services for far cheaper. So because we kind of delve into Big Fours earlier, I want to talk a little bit, because this is an ongoing topic amongst myself, other people in the consulting space, you being one of them, how large corporations will often hire Big Fours at 20 times the cost versus a smaller company, small to mid-sized company like yours or mine, to do the same work, right? So in your opinion, what is the reasoning behind that? I have my own reason, but I want to hear yours first.
Sure. I mean, to me, it's really kind of like the branding where, again, they got into the market so early, like hundreds of years or something. They already have the client base. their accounting clients might as well just hire them for something else if they offer. I think it's really like the relationship that they've gotten going for, accumulated for that long time, got them the easy access to it. Plus, they're just doing like a lot of things. People would think they're more reliable. Just kind of like if you're trying to buy a pair of shoes, some people really like Amazon because they have Prime. They are like easy to return. You just need to drop it off like Whole Foods. So people might go to Amazon just to buy a pair of shoes just because for that reason.
Customer experience.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. They know what to expect.
Makes sense. I have this theory that, if I'm an executive and I've got some major initiative for the year and I've interviewed, the Big Four and I've interviewed an Insphere, right? For the same work, ERP installation. If I'm an exec, I'm like, even if I have a relationship with you, it's one of those things where it's like, if I go with Deloitte and they fail, everyone's going to be like, man, Deloitte messed up. They're going to ask for some big rebate on all those costs, right? Versus if they go with Inspire and April Wu, and for some reason you fail, not to say that you would, but like, it's almost like the executive is going to get fired because they're going to be like, why did you go off the board and hire a small company?
Oh, okay.
Even though your cost is probably like a third of what it would cost for Deloitte to come in with their army of, junior level people fresh out of college to, create PowerPoint decks all day.
Yeah. Yeah. And the formatting, making sure your folder is bolded.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we're laughing because we know that behind the scenes, that's the kind of stuff that, consulting firms really harp on is like formatting has to be right. Fonts have to be right. Like everything has to be absolutely perfect because the last thing you would do is lose a customer or client, let them get hung up on the fact that you misspelled something or, the border is not, it's right. 2 inches on one side and 1.2 inches on the other side, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that, believe it or not, in corporate America sometimes becomes a conversation and it's distracting from the greater project itself, right?
For sure.
So yeah, it's funny you brought that up. Okay, so let's get back to the entrepreneurial journey, right? So you're working for Deloitte. How long do you work there?
I was there for about 2 years.
Okay. And then you decide to go to?
Then I actually just quit with a job lineup.
Okay.
So that was actually one of the harder times that I experienced in my life, actually. So back then I was, I actually, part of it is also my ignorance, starting off a career with, like no good mentor or like no good sense because I'm also in another country all by myself. Like, my parents wouldn't know what to do because this is a different country, different culture, different like work lifestyle. So I was pretty much like on my own. And back then, I don't have a good sense about like upward management or like setting my boundaries or anything, kind of really actively or like with a sense managing my career. So I didn't manage it very well to be, frankly, but also it was also kind of a not so friendly setting, let me put it that way, where I also feel like I'm very supported, to advancing my career. I think billable hours means more for sure back then. So I was under a lot of pressure back then, and something, big happened in my family as well. And I don't feel like I'm also emotionally supported back then as well. And I was just really kind of under too much stress. I feel like it's a point for me to quit before my mind quits me.
No, it makes sense. I talk about this a lot in just career development. I have this theory I call protecting one's swag. I got to come up with a fun acronym for swag, but basically like it's your confidence level, right? And I know you can probably speak to this being a consultant. The level of confidence you have to move in and out of corporations, in and out of environments, new clients, etc. Sell yourself as an entrepreneur. Like it's an extreme amount of I'm gonna call it positivity and energy that you have to have.
Yeah.
And working for a Big Four, like you can get beat down, to the point where like you start questioning your own abilities.
Exactly.
And I personally feel like if you lose that, I've watched people like, it might take them a decade to get that back. Like our careers are only going to be 30, maybe 40 years, right? Like,
Yeah,
you don't have a decade to spend like finding yourself.
exactly. Yeah. And I feel like, what we define life, I think life is just time plus energy. And
I love that.
It's limited for every single person or life. So every life has, defined and limited time and energy. If you consume it unwisely, that is consumed. You never get it back.
Okay, let's take a quick break and we'll come back. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. We'll be right back.
Hey IT execs, do you have a project in the red right now? Does it feel a little chaotic, almost like the house is on fire? Probably because it is. It doesn't have to be this way. We can do IT better together. I'm Chuck Scott, Scott Q Consulting. My team of experienced professionals will run directly into that burning house. That's what we specialize in, bringing that VP level of experience all the way down to the execution team. Schedule a meeting with me today. Chuck Scott, Scott Q Consulting. I believe that we can do IT better together.
Okay, so we're back. So you said something brilliant that I want you to deep dive into, April. So you said, basically, say it again.
Yeah, so to me, like life means time and energy, and it's limited for every single life. And if you spend it all wisely, you won't get it back.
It's brilliant. I love that. I'm probably gonna steal that. So no, I think that's a very important, and I'm big on time being essentially I call it my currency, right? Like I spend the time doing things that matter to me. It's weird, but to me, time is more valuable than money. I would rather spend money to buy time than spend time to get money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the very entrepreneurial way of thinking.
Yes. So, okay, so great. Let's get back to, speaking of entrepreneurial, let's get back to the journey. So you quit the job from Deloitte. You're in a foreign land, don't have family here. So, how long are you without a job? What are you doing? Like, how are you maneuvering this very ambiguous space that you're in?
Yeah, so it was actually even harder for me. So a lot of the immigrants would know this, like, the work visa is a lottery thing, and like you don't get it for sure. So back then, I don't even have a work visa. My work authorization is actually through a school that I signed up for. It's an MBA program that provides that visa. So as long as I can, work on something, like even a friend of mine that has a company and let me volunteer there, that qualifies for that work visa.
Okay.
So really between jobs, that I, luckily know a friend that has a company and he can, sign me up to be just a volunteer or something. I do work on something for him, but very minimal. So that kind of got me survived through. It really took me 3 months to land on my next role, which is actually a contractor role, which pays less than what I make back in school. Okay. I was a tutor for athletes back in school, and they pay me pretty well for that. Mm-hmm. And that job that I landed on, I thought I would have landed on something much better with the Big Four experience and stuff. But not really. That was something that I got and I have to take on to move on with life. So luckily, while I'm working on that job, the contractor job, I met my husband, who was luckily a citizen, and eventually, we got engaged and married pretty soon after our first date. Which, by the way, is on Halloween.
Really? Well, congrats. We are recording this on Halloween 2023. So, congrats on your anniversary.
Thank you.
How many years?
It's 6 years.
Congrats.
Thank you.
All right. So, and you're still in Chicago at this time.
Yeah.
In the story. Okay.
Yeah. So. It was still Chicago. And we met, and that contractor job was actually a temp because their full-time employee was on maternity leave, so I was all in there for a sub. I started that role sometime October, and then basically they told me, well, we need you till end of the year. So by the end of the year, it was 2017. I went to look for another job.
Okay.
Which luckily, I think I did pretty well. Like the manager was impressed. And he actually kept urging that staffing company, like, can you find April something else? Can you find April something else? And eventually they found me something else. And I got another contractor role.
Okay. All right. Cool. So you get another contractor role. And are you still like in the financial realm, or are you, okay, so you're still in the finance realm?
Finance, but luckily the contractor role I kept getting on are kind of like an analyst kind of role. It's not like, I'm just doing accounting, booking journal entries all day, or just doing taxes all day. It's kind of like a analysis thing. So there are sales that I work on, data that I work on, and report I generate. And the second contractor job I got actually is ERP related.
Okay.
So they were having some trouble with ERP, and like something didn't go through the right way, so we have to keep adjusting the journal entry to adjust it back. So that's why they hired me, because they need somebody to keep adjusting those. But when I'm there, I kind of went through the whole flow, like, hey, what it should be and what it's doing right now that got me this job even, which they really shouldn't have that experience, had everything set up right. So I basically looked through the whole thing, and I did some like flow chart, kind of voluntarily. It's not even part of my role.
Yeah.
I just did that voluntarily, and I gave them a flow chart, like, hey, this is what it should be. This is what it is like right now. If you guys get a fix, you don't need me here anymore.
So I definitely want to pause on this, because one of the things I love talking about is career development, entrepreneurialism, and you kind of touched on something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I have this theory that a lot of people get into jobs and they really can't solve the puzzle of why haven't I been promoted? And some of it comes down to exposure, right? And I feel like people get caught in the cycle of, hey, that's not my job, let me stay in my lane. And especially, you mentioned immigrant mentality earlier. And I feel like immigrant mentality, minority mentality is like our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation. A lot of times they tell us things like, keep your head down, don't ruffle feathers. And, you just described stepping out of your lane, doing something that wasn't asked of you, but you recognize a need, which equates to exposure because it's adding value, right? And so, you're diagnosing this problem, which, to your point, you're eliminating your own job if you solve it.
Right.
And in theory, that sounds counterintuitive, right? Because if you don't, they'll need you, they'll pay you. But in reality, and I think this is what breeds good consultants, is you solve problems like that, that's what people will pay for. And that's why people pay or hire consultants, because they literally eliminate problems.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this imaginary line in the sand between employees that don't know how to get promoted and they do jobs that are repetitive. And every week that job should be there. And someone says, hey, systemically, we have this challenge. We need someone to manually intervene. And that's your job. They're like, yep, every day I'm going to show up Monday through Friday. And I'm going to do that thing. And next week I'm going to do the same thing. And they never, ever try to solve it, right? And I feel like that line in the sand is people like yourself, like me, because at one point, multiple times I've eliminated my own job, right?
Yeah.
But it's a mindset, right? You're like, this is silly. Every week I come in and I do the same thing. When I dive deeper, here's the flow. Oh, look, there's the gap. This part right here, if we fix that, this job goes away, this problem goes away. So I love that you did it. And that's an exposure thing where people in upper management, they pay attention to that. And I want you to quote something to the effect of, you will be paid in proportion to the amount of problems you solve. Not that you perpetuate, that you solve.
Right.
And so that's really what you described there, was solving a problem, eliminating a problem.
Exactly.
And again, going back full circle to what the consultants really do, they eliminate problems. They're not there to be ongoing, I'll call it production support, or ongoing they're not doing an ongoing job. They're there to solve a problem or deliver a good, and then they move on to the next thing.
Definitely. I think that's also tied to when we talk about life. It's time and energy. People like us probably don't want to, keep spending our time and energy, which is extremely valuable, on the same thing for the rest of our lives.
Let me be honest, April. I hate that. I despise them. Like I struggle with things like laundry and dishes because like they're never ending. But like I hate them because of like I should be able to solve this.
Me too. Yeah. Same thing. I feel like anything I can walk through in my mind before I actually do it, I kind of like don't like to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is because it's an old challenge. It's an old problem. It's never ending. You can't solve for it. You're like, I don't even want to deal with it, right? Like,
right.
People, consultants mentally want to like resolve problems once and for all.
Right.
So I definitely need to circle back to that one. Okay, so back on our career journey here. So you're back to working. You're still in the financial space. Okay, so what's going on next?
Yeah. So I was trying to solve that thing, which I presented to my manager and the senior manager, and it's unfortunately a really, really, really big, like international company. They're just too big, and big corporate. They normally have the layers of decision making before one idea can be implemented. Mm-hmm. So I advocated that for a long while, and my senior manager was advocating. But between then to when that idea actually gets implemented in the company, it actually happened after I leave that company already. So we got married, and I was able to get my green card pretty soon. So I'm like, yeah, I've been kind of drifting for a while. Let me just get a stable full-time job that I like. So I took on a full-time job. It was actually a NetSuite administrator. So that's kind of like how I got my foot into the industry, the ERP industry. So I left for that company before that idea is even getting worked on.
Gotcha. Okay, so now you're in the ERP space. So
actually, a funny fact. So after like a couple months I left that company, my idea got implemented, and my old team was eliminated.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you solved the problem.
Right. And my manager had to leave.
Yeah. So really quick, I want to also talk about this. So I don't know if this is true for you, but in my circles I run in, I would say less than 10% of my social circles are entrepreneurs. And so, oftentimes I hear things like, man, I can never be a contractor. I could never do that. I need to know where my paycheck's coming from 6 months from now, 12 months from now. And I often say things like you just said, you never know when your team's going to be eliminated, your job's going to be eliminated. I personally feel like the risk factor is the same, whether I'm a full-time employee or a, self-employed person.
Right.
And in some ways, I feel a little bit more stabilized being entrepreneurial because they hire me for a job. And, if it's a 6-month job, a 12-month job, for all intents and purposes, they probably want that job done. Unless like the economy's gone, belly up, or that company's business has gone belly up. For the most part, like when they hire you for a job, you're going to finish that job.
Yeah.
So Al, what's your take on it?
Yeah, so I would say I definitely agree. I feel like if you're like kind of adapt to that, you have to constantly making sales. I think that's the part where full-time job employees are most afraid of. Which is also what I was afraid before I hop off.
Yeah.
So, the main thing is like, hey, what if I, get something, I get it done, and I never get the next one? Or like, I don't know how long before I get the next one. That's where the main scare comes from. But if you're already adapting into this growth and you're constantly building your pipeline, things like that, it would mitigate the risk. Like if you're just a full-time employee, you probably don't do much like networking or like constantly thinking of like your pipeline.
Sales pipeline, yeah.
If something hits, your team got eliminated, then it's a bigger risk because you lose the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to make sure that we get to like you being self-employed. So
the next full-time job that I got, that was still in Chicago. That was my last job in Chicago. That one didn't go very well because I guess I was too kind of a consulting minded or entrepreneurial minded, where my manager kind of see me as a threat. And by the way, my previous job was kind of too boring because I have to, kind of repetitively doing one thing. I actually took some time to learn coding myself.
Okay.
So, which lined me up to that role, which I know accounting and coding, and I was able to automate some Excel process, which usually take 2 full-time people a whole day. So 16 hours to build that report. Well, I got like a Excel VBA, like a macro in where you click a button, you just let it go, and it will get it done in an hour or something.
Yeah. Not the point of this conversation, but basically what she just described there is what everyone's afraid of in the AI world. It eliminates a lot of, I may call it automatable jobs, right? Like, to your point, if you're spending, 2 people are spending 8 hours a day to generate a report, and there's no analysis happening in that can be automated through macros and other things.
Right.
And, to your point, some lightweight development work maybe, but for the most part, those jobs, are in jeopardy. You need to be able to harness those tools and do human analysis on top of the actual act and just generating the report to and drive value. Okay, I don't want to stay there because this is not an AI conversation. Okay, so now, everything you talked about, April, is what I deem the entrepreneurial mindset. You're adding value everywhere. You're looking to eliminate broken processes. To solve problems once and for all. When you have bandwidth, you're looking to add value in, like, even in personal investment of new skills. Quite frankly, those above you get threatened because if they're not of the same mindset, you're quickly rising where they're being stagnant, right? So they see that gap closing, and you're getting positive exposure through the fact that you're solving problems, adding value, right? Like, these are all the things that drive towards both consulting and entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
So, I think at this point in the story, have you moved to Columbus yet?
No.
Okay.
That was the last job. So my manager started to see me as a threat, and as he started to block me from, a lot of project meetings that are, good projects. So I feel like, I'm not getting upward sponsorship to move up. So I'm like, it's probably a time to move on. And nowadays, NetSuite is a good industry. So if you put the word NetSuite in your LinkedIn or resume, people is gonna, reach out to you. So I got reached out by some recruiters, and this one of the jobs that they presented is the one in Columbus.
Okay.
So it was a consulting role, which I think I would like better because I can talk to more people and have more influence, footprint. So I decided to move on and take the consulting job. And luckily, my husband was supportive enough. I mean, it's a really good job. It makes sense for the family. So he moved here with me as well.
Okay.
I was actually raised in Chicago for this whole life, basically.
So you guys moved to Columbus. The NetSuite job goes well.
Yeah, it went really well. I was actually the first consultant for this company. They just signed their very first implementation deal. Nobody has done any NetSuite implementation in the company. So I was there. It was actually the rescue. So they engaged NetSuite, Oracle NetSuite. They wasn't able to get them live for more than a year. And I was there with my manager. She's more kind of like a project managing. I was able to kind of dig into like, hey, can we be crafty and, get this functionality or get this process automated for these people? Or like get some custom PDF that they want to print out. So I was there doing the kind of crafty stuff. And we were able to get them live in 3 months.
Okay. So let me make sure to close some of these gaps here. For those of you outside of the IT space, sounds like some other company hired, the client hired another company to do his NetSuite install. For whatever reasons, parts and pieces weren't working. Think of, you've got a car, but your transmission doesn't work, right? So hence you don't really have a car. And at this point, it sounds like the company and the implementation partner have parted ways, and now they hired April's company to come in and do a rescue mission of sorts, or what I like to call red projects and recovery projects, which are never fun, quite frankly, because you're coming into a war zone basically that has already been like napalm, the nuclear bombs landed. It's a disaster.
You're right.
And you're expecting to like brick by brick put this together and somehow keep people fed, clothed, and sheltered. Is that a good way to describe it? Like
for sure, yeah. Like a momentum, or like people have faith in something. They when they engage the previous company, they probably expect, like they promise, like, hey, we're gonna get you licensed in 3 months, and then they were looking for that, but that never happened for a year. So they're like, oh, what, this new people really keep their promise again, or it's the same thing. So they don't know how much energy to even allocate.
Yeah, so there's that word energy again. But I was going to say this. There's a level of PTSD that has also happened.
Right.
To your point, the client is beat down because they got this bad implementation for a year. They probably been working like long hours to only have no success. So like the morale is down. And so that's part of the role too of a consultant, is to bring the energy, somehow like ignite the joy back into these people's lives.
Yeah.
And just to like, I always say this, like when I say brick by brick, really it's like you need to get a quick win, and then you just need to keep like running with that momentum, and you see like the light come back in their eyes, right? Like every day. And then they start like kind of gravitating towards you as a consultant, because they just haven't had like anything to be excited about for a long time. And so here you are leading the charge through this like ambiguous situation. You're like, okay, well, we made it to here. We just need to get over there. That's not that far away. So let me help guide you guys there. And like just getting that traction, building the trust back up, removing some of that like PTSD that they're all experiencing of like, I don't know if this is going to work because the last one didn't work. So, the role of consulting, again, I love shedding light into the world of consulting, because I think people have a perception of what consulting is, and it's so multifaceted that I love talking about it more on the podcast here. So,
it's a mindset.
It is a mindset, total mindset, and you wear so many hats of like I said, cheerleader and coach, and sometimes you're a mentor, and just all sorts of things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you're doing this recovery project. Sorry, I derailed there.
Oh no, that's all good derails. Yeah, so like you said, we're like running into like a very deserted land where they have no hope, and we really need to get something in. I ran into a quote earlier when I was browsing LinkedIn. It says, perfection sometimes is forbidding it getting done. So in this situation that we got in, we just need to get it done. So we promised the 3 months, and I worked my ass off. Like I worked, I don't know, like till 3 a.m. in the morning, and I don't care. I just wanted to keep my promise. So we're really like throwing a lot of hours there, and luckily we get the management team sponsorship. So people do give us attention, and we are there on site every day. They see us there every day working on their stuff. We talk to a lot of people throughout the company. We have meetings throughout the day. We send them updates every day, so they see the progress. And we kept sending them like, hey, go live, no change, still this day. Go live, no change, still this day, every week. So they started to know like, oh, this is really happening, and at least people are getting that happen.
Yeah. So you're speaking to the project management element and the, what are our dates? What are our milestones? Are we gaining traction? Are we still on track? It's the early and often communication, the transparency, all those things, help undo that PTSD, because chances are that last implementation partner probably was not doing these things. They were told like, we're going live in 6 months or 3 months or whatever it was. You get there, it doesn't happen, and then you're just in this like storm, right?
Right.
The storm lasts a year, only for you guys to part ways and no deliverable happen.
For sure.
So yeah, that's a great. I love that you described that in such a great way. Okay, so recovery project happens. What's the next thing that you tackle?
Yeah, so that's really it not only boost the customer's confidence, it also boosts my own confidence about myself. Because I went there, I learned basically the whole new thing all by myself on job. And I basically trained myself. I figured things out all by my own. I feel a good relationship just between me and that piece of software. So from there, I kind of feel like, I think, this could be my career. So from there, I stayed with the consulting firm. They got new customers for like support, like they're already live, but nobody's like kind of answered their questions or getting their issues solved quickly. So we got some support projects and another implementation, brand new implementation, which I actually did it all by myself with one of their finance heads. So two of us got them live. And eventually COVID hit and their sales is not going so well, and they decided to end the entire NetSuite service line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had to find another job, which wasn't so hard because, like I said, NetSuite heavens are in demand nowadays. So I was able to land on another job.
Okay.
That's the last job before I...
So to summarize, April, you've had this this consulting role where you're just all day long putting on different hats. You're learning all these rapid skills. You're customer facing, right? Like you're in the trenches with the customer.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is around the time that we met, right? Because, so we met at a speaking engagement for a mutual colleague of ours, Dave Cherry. And, April and I get to talking afterwards, and she's telling me all these, I'll call it war stories. And she's telling me how she's thinking about, doing something on her own, right? And, I'm hearing her tell all these war stories, and I think I said something to the effect of, you've already lived the life, essentially. What's stopping you?
Yeah, that was definitely a very inspiring of that session that I attended, and thank you again for saying that. I kind of feel like I kept wanting to do it, but kind of also self-doubting at the same time. And you say, like, I think you're ready, really make me feel like, oh, maybe I am. Like, someone told me I'm ready. Like, maybe I'm ready. So it's kind of like just that assertive sentence that you said really made it happen.
Yeah, no, I felt like you were on the edge of the cliff to jumping off into entrepreneurialism full time. I maybe gave you a little nudge, but if just from talking to you, you sounded so like you've already lived most of life. I think the only thing that you ended up was, and you touched on this earlier, the sales portion of it, right? Like really going out there and creating your own sales pipeline, which, to your point, that does hold people back. People are afraid of, what if I can't sell? What if I get one client and then like there's no more work and I can't find another client? Like those are real concerns, but it's a growth process. I tell people all the time, if you are going to be an entrepreneur, if you don't have a sales element to you, you need to hire someone that can, because it doesn't matter how skilled you are, or if you have solved like the mysteries of the world, if you have no one to sell that, like it's dead. It's a dead idea. It doesn't matter. You have to have a sales pipeline and a client base to sell it to. You see this model all the time, but all these great companies that we know typically have two co-founders, right? And when you really get to know these people, one is the technical person, it's a technical, product, and the other person is the salesperson. And typically the salesperson kind of morphs into a CEO role of sorts, like a chief operating role, but realistically, their value is in the ability to find a market to sell that product to. I think about Zuckerberg and Facebook, right? Like his roommate became that kind of like salesperson that he eventually, they had a legal battle about, over the ownership of it and whatnot. But like initially, that person would beating the pavement per se, all over the country, all over the world, finding basically like investors and buyers for this product of what they were creating, which we now know is social media, right? And just the power, the ability to articulate the power of that and what that means to the world, how it could change the world. They're really promoting and selling this new piece of software and technology. So anyway, back to your journey, right? So you step out there. How do you gain your first client?
So my first client is actually the final trigger that got my, resignation letter. So it's another contractor job. So
Okay.
kind of like get very thirsty for like a full-time kind of stableness for a while, and then now I'm trying to hopping off again. So it's a 3 month contracting, and it's actually in Chicago. So I had to move to Chicago for another 3 months. But I got that contract, and just to be very transparent here, my last full time was paying me $130K a year, and then this new job is paying me $100 an hour. So I kind of feel like, hey, even if it's just like 3 months, let's say, for my phase in the industry, let's say the maximum gap that I would have from the next contract would be a month. I think whatever I make here comparing to my previous role, it wouldn't make me enough for 4 months.
Yep.
So I only need to work for 3 months, but I make 4 months worth of money. So that kind of justified it, and I feel like, hey, I can bear 1 month gap. I can travel or something. So I took on that one, and I decided to resign.
Okay.
But luckily, the market was really going well. That while I'm working on that one, some of my old customer actually came back to me because my previous employer don't do NetSuite anymore, and they came back to me. And I got somebody else reaching me on LinkedIn, and I got more like staffing company reaching out to me on LinkedIn for like contractor job. So my LinkedIn got busy, and I feel like, yeah, I made a good decision.
Yeah.
Good decision to hop off.
Yeah. So I had a very similar experience back in 2018 when I started my consulting firm, and I had similar concerns. What if, I can't sustain the sales pipeline? What if I had gaps in between? To your point, making significantly more than my full-time job, but still my concern was I don't want to have a 6-month gap or, whatever. And I quickly found out that, like, to your point, LinkedIn starts buzzing, right? Like, and my problem wasn't keeping myself employed. My problem was now a scalability problem.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about how did you, overcome this, what I call the scalability problem. Like, the best case scenario has happened. You have sales. You have clients.
Yeah.
Now, how do you scale to match all their needs and demands?
Yeah. So actually, so after I realized I need to hire someone. At first, I was looking for somebody like a part-time, because I did some part-time. When I was working full-time, there were some side projects that I work on. So it's pretty easy. Like if I can do that, somebody else can do that. I just need to find a good resource. So in NetSuite, just a little bit more about the industry itself. Oracle NetSuite put a really, really big support center in the Philippines, in Manila, Philippines.
Okay.
So they have a lot of people like well-trained and have dealt with, client-facing before. So I actually reached out to a staffing company. Actually, they found me on LinkedIn, like, at the right time when I was looking for people. Somebody reached out, and we had a conversation, and he was able to find somebody for me. And the hourly that I wouldn't pay is very, very reasonable. So I can still make some kind of a profit margin by having a part-time helper. So that's when I start to recruit somebody in my team. And soon after, it gets busier and busier, and I wanted to delegate something else. I converted that part-time to a full-time still.
So I want to pause here. The whole reason people listen to podcasts is because they're finding inherent value in it, and it's free knowledge. So I want to give you guys a word of advice here. The Philippines and, virtual assistants are a walking cheat code right now. The resources that are in the Philippines, and I'm going to shout out my virtual assistant, Edward, who's going to edit this podcast for me. Shout out Edward. Edward's been a godsend to me in my business. He is a virtual assistant that is, he's educated. He's the equivalent to, what I would call an MBA graduate here stateside. And he can work wonders in a plethora of different things. Like his knowledge is wide, and he can go deep on things, but I love that he's wide. So I can throw things to him like podcast editing or research analysis or build me a spreadsheet or rewrite something like, and, on top of that, like now we have ChatGPT. So between Edward and ChatGPT, like I'm gaining back my currency of time every which way I look. And he's wonderful to work with, and we've been able to establish a great relationship over a number of years. So shout out to Edward there. But I definitely wouldn't talk about that. Like, what you're talking about, April, is quite frankly how small businesses quickly scale and at affordable cost, and it's minimal, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you're not tied down to a full-time employee, right?
Yeah.
Right? You can start with 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, because they can service multiple clients at once, and they're comfortable doing that. They can juggle a lot of things at once, but they're highly talented, great resources, and there are staffing companies that work out of the Philippines that can, pair you up with the right person with the right skill sets for what your business needs and is tailored to.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So go ahead. So you're saying how you're converting your person to a full-timer?
Yeah, so I converted her to a full-timer, and we got another implementation that she and I did. What I do find out that started to be, kind of like my journey of the whole hiring stuff. It's kind of hard to find good people, to be honest. And sometimes, it's kind of like you might also start to doubt, like, if I let her go, would I find somebody better? Like, or it's all like that. So I think that's another kind of a leap of faith where you just have to trust that there are people better out there. If you're looking for a specific kind of people, you just need to put the time and the effort to search.
Yep.
Like, never stuck with somebody that you're not happy with. So she was kind of, she was junior to begin with, but her attitude is also not the best suitable for the company back then. So it struggled me so well because she's my first employee. Plus, it's kind of like it's a 2-people team. If I let her go, I'm back to, kind of a one-person team. Like, people will see me as a contractor again instead of a consulting firm.
Yep.
So that really kind of make me feel like, hey, I want to be a firm instead of like just a contractor individual.
Yep.
So those thoughts really kept me not letting her go, even though she's not, meeting my standard and stuff. And I still have to do a lot of stuff myself, and reviewing her work, even redo her work. So eventually I decided to let her go, and I actually stopped with part-time people for a while before I moved forward with another person to become a full-timer.
Okay. All right, so things are going well. You're staffing up. You're finding the right talent. LinkedIn's blowing up for you. You're getting opportunities. Does that kind of put this into the current day?
Yeah. So right now, I would say because we are also open for subcontracting, and there are a lot of other consulting firm or other people that's trying to implement NetSuite or already live, but need somebody to continue to support them because it's a big company. Things always happen. We're open to take on those. So it's me, and I do have another full-timer right now. I have a part-time developer, and I'm actually trying to hire 2 new people. One on the NetSuite side, and I'm also opening Odoo side. So I'm looking for somebody that can do a little bit of sales and also like the consulting.
Gotcha. For those that don't know, Odoo is another ERP solution out there. So yeah, this is amazing. And you kind of touched on the subcontracting element, and you also touched on the LinkedIn element. So I want to again free knowledge out there for people that may be thinking about starting their own company. LinkedIn, if you aren't leveraging this tool, I hear people say all the time, like, LinkedIn doesn't do anything, right? It tells me somebody to view my profile. What to do? That doesn't do anything for me. I'm like, look, if your profile's not up to date, if it's not robust, if you're not posting content out there about, the things that you're passionate about in your career, you're not leveraging the tool well. It's really just a big database that lets the world be able to search on your skill sets and find you specific skill sets to you. And I found it to be such a great tool over the years. I was an early converter to LinkedIn. I started leveraging somewhere around like college. And for me, it was just fascinating to find out what people did in their professional lives. I played hockey with. And from there, I just leveraged it into, now as an entrepreneur, it's a great way to network with other consulting firms because tons of consulting firms don't have a project management element or business element, business analyst element or scrum masters or, program managers. And that's why I try to fill that gap. So I help implementation partners like you do their scope management, do their report outs, like all the things we talked about, especially when you're talking a recovery project. These are things that need to be in place to manage the stakeholders and make sure that delivery is happening in a very concise, well communicated, transparent way. But I get called from other consulting firms that maybe need a temporary program manager or a project manager, etc. And vice versa, right? Or shared skill sets. Maybe I got a client that's looking to do an ERP implementation. I may partner with April, and together we're collectively attacking that project together, right? So the sales challenge sometimes is shared, right? It's one of those things where a lot of sister companies understand that it's better to split large and get the job done and not have to go, what they call it, out into the wild to look for talent versus just leveraging the talent that you've already fostered.
Yeah.
That's part of your team. I think people have the concept of consulting as I define 100% of my work. And sometimes it's referrals, sometimes it's, through proximity to other, like I said, I'll call them sister companies or, companies that you just have great working relationships with.
Yeah, for sure. So far, I don't think I have actively sold my business to anybody. All of them kind of, they either find me from LinkedIn or they find me from a staffing company or through referrals from my previous employer who don't do next way anymore. All of my clients came that way. So my sales strategy has been just waiting, and they came to me. That needs to change, but I need to be more actively managing my pipeline and stuff. But historically, that happened that way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. You've been in business how long?
I actually I helped off to take that role in Chicago, that 3 months contract in 2021. But I officially established the company Insphere Consulting March of last year.
Okay.
So it's slightly more than a year.
Nice. Congrats.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah, almost 2 years. I was going to say, congratulations on that. They say the first year is the hardest. So, to be able to get past year one and, we're currently experiencing a recession. I know people don't want to admit that, but we're in the middle of a recession. Me personally, I lived through a pandemic, and that was year 2 for me in business. And I was like, look, if I survive this pandemic, I can survive anything. That was
right.
That was my mentality at the time. But yeah, no, it's amazing. Tell the people, what would you say was your biggest hurdle, in the last 2 years in getting this stood up?
Yeah, and that's my biggest hurdle is kind of scale up while maintain my standard. So I actually, luckily, I personally know a lady. We signed up for it's WSBA, a Women's Small Business Accelerator. They're a nonprofit in Central Ohio. Both her and I signed up for the same class program. And we become pretty close. And she has her own kind of HR, DEI consulting practice. And, she just she has really good kind of HR foundation experience. So I partner up with her when I try to hire somebody. She's going to do some interviews with me. She also suggested me to kind of write something down about my standard.
Okay.
So I actually wrote something down about our white glove standard. So what I expect as industry average, and this is what we have to step above and beyond to be called Insphere white glove standard. So I wrote that thing down, and for everybody that I hire and I train, we'll need to meet that standard as our delivery. So with that, it gives me more confidence to bring people in. I can train them to make sure they're on the right track to meet the standard before I hand them off. I do like to train people from kind of ground up. I either welcome people that with no NetSuite background but strong accounting background. I welcome them and I can train them up.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because the standard means more to me and reputation more than, billable hours.
Makes sense. I love it. Kind of getting into the conversation here. What word of advice would you have to someone like yourself that's thinking about, jumping off the ledge? If you were speaking to yourself back when I met you, what would you say to yourself, or what advice would you give to yourself?
Wow, I would say all I needed are really just like faith to myself and faith to the industry. So, I think back then what I lacked was really the faith. Sometimes you really need like the second voice to really tell you, like influence you, like, hey, you're really ready. Sometimes it's kind of like a cost-benefit analysis. Like, for example, I kept thinking, if I jump off and, with that 3-month contract, I feel like it gives me enough time. Like, if I don't find anything after that, can I find another job, after 3 months or with like a couple months of gap? I think I can, like for people with my background, I think I can easily find another job if I want to. So really kind of that cost-benefit analysis gave me more confidence about, hey, what if fail?
Right.
I still have a backup. Worst case, I just find another job that pays me $130K a year, which doesn't sound so bad.
Not such a bad lifestyle, right? Like, yeah, that's a dynamic thing when you realize that, your basement, right? Like, is not such a bad lifestyle in the bigger scheme of American, fabric, right? Like, or the world globally. You're like, okay, I need to take that risk because worst case scenario, I get a job, to your point, doing what I was doing before, which again is a pretty good lifestyle.
Yeah.
So no, I love that. And I love the worst case scenario analysis because I think most entrepreneurs kind of look at things that way of, okay, worst case scenario, where's my basement? Oh, I can live with that. Okay, let's take the risk, right? Like,
yeah.
I hate to say that. I shouldn't say I hate to say it. That's been me for a long time. I literally look at my worst case scenario, and at some point I realized that my worst case scenario is what used to be my ceiling when I first entered adulthood.
Yeah.
My goals as an adult would have been something which you just described there. Maybe a middle management in corporate America, making somewhere between 90 and 120K a year, right? Like that would have been my adult goals.
Right.
As a fresh out of college kid, right? Like if that's my basement at this stage of my career, not so bad, right?
Yeah.
I can live with that.
I'm really glad that you brought that topic up. But that's also something that I kept thinking about. It's kind of like the whole life, like our parents, our grandparents, or whoever, like our teachers in school. The whole training that we took is with a goal that you're going to be a good employee.
Yeah.
You're going to find a good like full-time job. Like nobody really kind of even gave us the alternative, like, hey, I think you can also, have your own company. Like, nobody train you as if you're going to be, an owner of a new company. Everybody trains you as if you're going to be a good employee for somebody else.
Yeah. So I was blessed with entrepreneurial parents. So I saw that model up close. I'm always amazed when someone that doesn't have the model is able to connect those dots and make that leap of faith on their own. So I love hearing stories like yours where you're like, I'm in a foreign land, I'm speaking my second language, and here I am like, taking this massive leap of faith, but here's the steps that got me there, right? Like I love hearing those stories. And I think it's inspirational for the listeners, for other people to understand like the thought process and how you logically get there and what are kind of like the check marks to know that you're ready. One of the things that neither one of us has said, but was a trigger for me was enough people kept saying, you're the best project manager I've ever seen. And, these are people that have had whole IT careers. And I'm like, how is that? Like, I didn't really accept that at first. So I was like, oh, they're being nice, right? And I kept hearing it over and over again. And then, people would give me feedback of, you're one of the most well-spoken people I've ever heard. And, you deliver messages well. People kept saying, oh, you get the bigger picture. And again, like solving problems where like you're eliminating jobs, like all these things came together where I was like, started connecting the dots of, I could probably add value in a different way, different capacity than a traditional job, right? So no, I think that's excellent. April, this has been a wonderful conversation. Again, tell the people where they can find you, how they can get your services.
Yeah, so we're, again, Insphere Consulting, Insphere as INSPHERE. So if you look me up on inspireconsulting.com or just send an email to April@inspireconsulting.com, you will be able to find me.
Awesome. And of course, you can find April on LinkedIn. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Chuck Scott. I am the owner of Scott Q Consulting. We specialize in the PMO suite, project leadership and delivery from a consultation standpoint. You can find me on LinkedIn. My company is also on LinkedIn, Scott Q Consulting, or you can find us online at https://scottq.consulting.com. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, #PMIRL. Today, we focused a little bit more on the entrepreneurial journey. I am really thanking my guest, April Wu, for joining us today and promoting Inspire, ERPs, and just the entrepreneurial journey as a whole and really sharing her story. So thank you again. And for the listeners, my pleasure. And something tells me this won't be the last time. And for the listeners, obviously you can find this on YouTube if you're watching the video, or you can listen to us on all your major podcast forums. Where I'll continue to produce content similar to this, talking about career advice, entrepreneurial journeys, as well as project management principles and how they can be applied to everyday life. Thanks again for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we look forward to more content similar to this.